Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad that you're here. We're fortunate to be joined by Dr. Brandon C. White, Superintendent of the Harvard Community Unit School District 50. Harvard CUSD 50 operates a nationally recognized dual language program serving students from pre-K through grades 12 in Harvard, Illinois. Dr. White, a happy hello, and I just want to welcome you and really appreciate you sitting down to talk with us today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me. Thank you. I've been looking forward to this conversation. We start school tomorrow, but I'm glad I was able to squeeze this time in and so we could have this conversation.
Pleasure is all ours. So I kind of want to go back to the beginning because I think that's really important of the story. You were relatively new to the district when you decided to seek an external review of the dual language program and services for students who are English learners. And for our listeners today, I just want to note that Dr. White and I will be both using English learners, ELs, and multilingual learners, MLs. We'll use ELs when we're referring to students that are formally identified in a school system, and MLs as more of an assets-based term for students who are learning or even proficient in more than one language. So, Dr. White, tell us what prompted you to take the step to request an external review so early on in your tenure, and what were you hoping to better understand?
Sure. So again, thanks for having me. One of the things that I have had the privilege of learning, this is the fourth district that I've had the privilege of working in. And one of the things you have to do when you're joining a new community, a new school district, is take a moment to pause and listen and be the learner yourself. And one of the things I heard from our community loud and clear was although we are a very diverse community, we are a majority Hispanic population, around 76%. However, we're about 50% multilingual learners, with dominance about 98% of that being native Spanish speakers as their native language. And what we were hearing, though, is there was this disconnect or understanding around dual language, and what the purpose of dual language was for all learners, whether you're a native English speaker or you are a native Spanish speaker. And so that was one area. The second area is we have a lot of room to grow in regards to academic achievement for all students. And with over half of our population being multilingual learners, I knew that's where we had to start. We have to start it in that conversation. And again, driving home the fact of what's good for multilingual learners is typically good for all learners. And so beginning to have that conversation of, what is working, what is not working, what needs to be adjusted, but starting with that community voice, both from educators and from the parents, I believe, and it has proven to be very valuable as we now engage in the improvement efforts.
I'm hearing a lot of words like diversity, academics, but for students, for all students, not just multilingual learners, and then the community. I think you said something about like you're listening and a learner yourself, and I'm thinking that's going to be kind of a theme that pops up in our conversation today a lot. But I have to say, it's something being said to being willing to kind of just invite someone into your a new community and saying, "Hey, come on over, hold up that mirror, let us, tell us what we might not be seeing." That takes courage.
Right. And I think even being new to the district, and not knowing the community well, I'm still a part of the district. And we always, regardless if we try not to be, we're going to be subjective. We wear a pair of glasses as an educator, as a person who has lots of responsibility to move the needle on academic achievement. I knew it was also important to have that third party come in and be able to observe and give us feedback, even if it was in line with what I was already believing and already seeing. I think it's highly important to have that additional data point from that third party to really drive home the need to improve or to make changes.
Absolutely. Definitely can be affirming. So you clearly you held up that mirror, you had the opportunity to understand where things stand today. Like as you said, it could be affirming. But then comes the harder part, right? Deciding what to do with what you've learned or what you've thought and knew about already. So I guess many districts are balancing, competing priorities, whether they're working to improve outcomes for multilingual learners. So I guess my question is to you is like, how do you think, I guess, how are you thinking about where you want to invest your time, your resources, your professional learning to kind of create that greatest long-term impact for multilingual learners?
Sure. And once we received our findings from SchoolWorks, it was very evident. And again, when we talk about multilingual learners compared to native English speaking students, if we don't have a strong, and I was so glad in the survey that it came out, but if you don't have a strong tier 1 instruction happening in all classrooms, it really doesn't matter what you do with EL supports or interventions or tier 2 or tier 3. Tier 1 has to be solid. And here in Harvard, because such a large population, a large part of our population is made up of multilingual learners, we also have to embed strategies within tier 1 that are going to help build language and have language targets, language goals, just as we do for the content, is highly important. And we have amazing teachers here, but what I believe we are not doing, or what the district had not done yet, is put the right tools and also teach teachers how to use those tools at the right time with the right students. And so what I saw and what came out in the findings are we had created this false sense of success, meaning we had lowered the bar of expectation where our students felt successful. But when they were compared to national norms, when we had to take our state assessment, our students weren't able to demonstrate the mastery on those because that's not what we were exposing them to in the classroom. And so one of the things we are really trying to focus on, not only quality instruction, but standards align and all students have access to grade level, high level, high quality tier 1 instruction.
I really appreciate that perspective. Exactly. Thinking about strengthening and strong tier 1 instruction across the board is beneficial for all students, not just multilingual students. I'd love to ask you kind of the way that you as a district invest in your resources, like monetarily, like grants. I think it's an important reality to name right now. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Sure. So I've been in a couple conversations both at the state and national level regarding current title funding, and right now we have dollars allocated for um, English learning programs, low socioeconomic areas. And I do have a concern, when there's talk about block grants and being able to loosen the parameters, because I think then it brings in a political aspect to serving students most in need. When we start to say these dollars can be spent everywhere. Um, Here in our district and in our state of Illinois, we are a bit more, I would say, pro public education than what we're seeing in other states. And so we don't have to rely as much on our title funding.
Mhm.
But also coming from previous areas where I've worked, Title III dollars are how most districts are able to provide the needed supports. And it's unfortunate that those dollars are sometimes seen as something that can be adjusted or used as a bargaining tool, bargaining chip, because these aren't luxuries. These are services and scaffolds and supports that students need. And without them, we can't do our job as a district. And so we value and we place priority on the needed supports multilingual learners need, just as we would our students with disabilities. What we have to also, though, realize is, again, I go back to our ed fund dollars that go into tier 1 supports are part of that equation as well. And so it can't be only title money. You have to have a conversation with your board, with the community, And I've had to battle that at times of, why are we doing X for this group of students? But it really comes down to when we say all students, it should be all students. And regardless of what pot of money we're using to get there, I want all my students to be successful. And I think that then pays dividends for the community when you have high achieving schools. It shouldn't matter how we get there or the dollars or if we are being equitable versus equal with our funding. It's to make sure that all students can be successful.
So I think what I'm hearing you saying is that it's kind of funding a program to build sustainable capacity. You're really thinking about embedding this work into the district's core system and budget for the long term.
Absolutely. I think um it goes back to when I was speaking to about tier one instruction. Often, and one thing that came out and that we're really working on is how do we make sure all of our teachers have the skills and the necessary tools to support multilingual learners. And that doesn't just happen in silos in a dual program or in an EL classroom, but instead that student can sit in a general education classroom, tier one instruction, and still receive the scaffolds and supports to help develop their language, just as we're developing math, just as we're developing science skills. Their language development is just as important. And one of the things that I learned from Amy while she was here working on ours is when I look at my high schoolers and understanding that language development needs to happen in all those content areas, in the biology classroom, in the chemistry classroom. And that's an area that we need to work on, is that we still see those scaffolds and supports only happening in the EL context or the dual language classroom. And we need to start to change the narrative and talk about how we all educate all students, including multilingual learner students, and what are those scaffolds and supports that you as that general education teacher can provide also to make those students successful.
Absolutely. And that's a really great segue, knowing that, another great challenge, I think, for districts is turning recommendations into action. How are you prioritizing kind of your next steps, building shared ownership, especially, and kind of engaging families and the community in this work?
Sure. And one of the things we are also working on at the same time is updating our strategic plan. And so our board has committed to that we will have a goal that is directly connected to supporting multilingual learners. And part of the feedback that we're getting is educating our parents on understanding their child's growth, their child's progress, not only, like I said, in letter grades, but also where's their language development and how are they progressing, both for, again, our dual students that may be native English speakers, just as we give them grades in their content areas. If those parents have chosen to have their kid in a dual language program, we should also be reporting how is their Spanish progressing. And so building that at the same time can be tricky, especially when you get into the secondary areas. But if you're really trying to build a quality dual language program that supports, again, native English speakers and multilingual learners, you have to be able to report that to parents in on both sides of the track. We're struggling with really from the feedback that we've received on our parents understanding some of the assessments we give and the purpose of them. And so we're really thinking about how do we design parent universities, parent supports, ongoing office hours where parents can come in with the report that they received during a parent teacher conference. And although that teacher may not have time to have that conversation, they can go to another room and we can really break down in various languages. What does this report mean? Where is your child growing? Where are their gaps? Where are their successes? And so that parent can walk out being better equipped to be a partner in their child's education versus just sending them to us each day and hoping that we do the best. Now they really understand what we're doing.
I love that. I really appreciate the focus on like bringing families along in the implementation. You talk about something we hear from schools and districts across the country about the complexities of language assessments. How do we understand this raw data? How do we understand like what a, development in language proficiency really is at each modality? So kudos to you all to really starting to figure that out and thinking about really concrete, actionable steps to bring around parents. Also sounds like you are working with your strategic plan, with your boards, a variety of stakeholders. It's really exciting to be able to, just uh, include all these folks in the work, the very, very important work. One question I get a lot is, so how do you move from simply just communicating, right, and sharing these results, getting all this with families and stakeholders, to really engaging them in partners in the work? You talked a little bit about that with the, bringing in sessions with families to help them better understand test scores, et cetera. Are there any quick wins or ideas that you could share with other folks?
So, I'm very transparent and in the fact that we're not there yet. We are working to implement a lot of the strategies. So I think one of our challenges is just like many other districts is how to, again, not those moments in time, but truly bring that parent in alongside for their child's journey. But I think one of the strategies that we have to do is to start day one with our preschoolers and having those conversations, and then developmentally along the way continuing to re-engage parents in that conversation. I think is the key, being very consistent, ongoing information is key. The second though part of that also is we have to understand that for many native English speakers versus other languages that may be their native language, navigating American schools is a challenge for a lot of individuals. And so we've had a lot of conversations of how do we do in a non-condescending way? How do we support parents understand how to navigate school alongside education about their child's growth? How do we navigate and how are you a partner, and how do we create natural and intentional opportunities for those parents to be partners? So we're working on, I know one just tangible item is paraprofessionals, and really supporting parents and getting training and letting them know that that's an opportunity because we're always looking for them. But the more parents are engaged in just understanding that role can also help them be a better parent, and a better educational partner for their child, while they also may be able to fill one of the vacancies that we may have.
Definitely. And again, that goes back to the capacity and your resources. Wonderful. So before we move on to some question and answers, just one final question for you, Dr. White. For other superintendents and district leaders out there who might be considering an external review of their multilingual learner program, what advice might you want to give them about approaching the process more as kind of a learning opportunity rather than just an evaluation?
Sure. I think being very clear about your why. Um, why do you need to do this? What are you hoping to discover? What are you finding out? And making sure your board is educated about those whys. Often, especially being a new superintendent, walking that fine line between being honest and transparent, and then also not being offensive, or you feel like you're coming in and you're the savior and you're going to come in and fix all the problems. And I think that's where that third party really creates that nice balance of being able to articulate, here are some wonderings I have. Why aren't our students excelling? Why aren't we seeing students progress to proficiency in the English language, even though we are have all of these supports? We have a nationally dual recognized program. Why is that? Why aren't we seeing the connection between ACT scores, standardized assessments? Why aren't we seeing that in relationship to the grades that we see our students getting? So I think being able to clarify and show your questions through data, and also both qualitative and quantitative, and then showing how a third party can really bring that in to give a non-biased view and lens, but also give you some strategies or some areas that you can begin to start to make some meaningful plans for change.
Everyone, Dr. Brandon C. White, thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right. So we did receive some questions prior to the webinar. So we'll address those first, and then it'll allow some people here to continue to submit questions online. Again, that is through the Q&A box. Dr. White, one participant is wondering, how do you distribute leadership and build capacity across the district so the work doesn't depend on one person?
So I think that's where it goes back to making sure we have worked really hard on building an instructional framework and lesson structure design. And embedded within that is strategies to support multilingual learners specific to this conversation, because it isn't about just when that student is receiving EL supports, EL services, or in the dual program and they're on the Spanish side of that. It really has to be all teachers having, especially with the population I serve, all teachers, all administrators need to have those valuable tools and strategies and know how to support those students. And so I think when it is embedded in the expectations of good instruction across the district, from the board down, I think that's how you ensure that it is a we approach versus just an individual approach.
Absolutely. Really, again, appreciate you kind of just focusing on that all students, all staff, all educators. Like you said, it's not just when you pull out a student or in that certain individual intervention or
Mhm.
accommodation, it's every day. Another question, what do you prioritize when making decisions and selecting programs or curricular resources that best support multilingual learners?
So I think first is it a high quality instructional material? Is it vetted and reviewed by a third party source? And then number two, is it culturally relevant? One of the things that came out of ours is we have lots of materials that are translated, but just because something is translated into Spanish here does not mean that it is culturally relevant or relatable for my students. And so really being aware of what we're putting in front of students twofold: high quality instructional materials, and then again, also making sure that they're culturally relevant and appropriate for our students are the two areas that we prioritize.
Absolutely. A really nice follow-up question from someone. What is the staffing model for your instructional leadership, and what roles have you prioritized to support the MLEL program?
Sure. So we just did a lot of redesigning of that, and can't do it my first year. So second year, we're starting to retool that, and so we have a Department of Talent, Teaching, and Innovation, which houses human resources as well as curriculum instruction, because I believe those have to be married together. And specific to multilingual EL programming, we have a director of multilingual instruction, and then we have instructional coaches. But not only are they well versed in content and pedagogical practices, but also do they have a strong EL background? And can they support teachers in that? And so that's how we've created kind of the support structure. Something we're also looking at is the district has really used Dual as its primary vehicle to support multilingual learners. And we're really starting to have conversations about what does it look like to have Dual and though also EL supports. We know we're not going to always be English, Spanish only. I've worked in districts that had 39 other languages. And so we really need to talk about how do we serve all students learning the English language, regardless of if it's the language that your dual program is anchored in, or if it's another language. We have to be able to build those supports for all learners. I hope I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely. Another question. A client of mine is considering launching a school with a dual language program. What steps should they consider?
So I think first, again, are you are you trying to meet a need, or are you trying to provide a learning opportunity that it is new, innovative to expand learning? I think that's the initial question that you have to ask, because that really then tells you what type of program to build. I've worked in districts where we've had multiple dual language tracks, where we had French, Chinese, and Mandarin, and Spanish. And so with that, we were really trying to provide a world language type of educational environment. Now, our Spanish dual language lane did serve also a lot of our students who were native Spanish speakers, but we also had EL supports alongside that. So again, I think it goes back to, why are you meeting a need, or are you expanding educational experiences and opportunities?
What I'm hearing you say is start with kind of the vision, the community demand, think through that program design.
Yep.
Wow. And would like to retie it to what you said earlier too, right? It's a school-wide instructional model that requires kind of alignment across everything, right? It's not just
Correct.
an individual isolated place.
Yeah. And I would also say, not only you knowing or having the answers to those questions, but making sure the community does. And that was I think, something we need to do better. We have a great dual program, but I'm not for sure if our community truly understands what the purpose of it is and how it can benefit native English speakers and students learning the English language.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, One last question, it looks like, around identification. What tools do you use to screen non-English speakers?
So we use WIDA access, our either the state required or the ones that we've used to work. We typically do a lot of our preschool screeners during the summer. So it's not a lot of time spent during the school year on that. Um, but what we're right now really trying to identify is, what are some good progress monitoring tools along the way to be able to not only communicate that to parents, but inform instruction, is one of the things that we were really trying to target and really trying to develop.
Definitely. And for those that might not know what the WIDA consortium is, Dr. White is talking about the WIDA case screener, which basically just assesses all language across modalities. Access is the kind of annual summative they take. But what's really interesting is that the WIDA screener does have an entry task that you can determine whether the student should continue with a full assessment or a shorter one that's designed for newcomers as well. Um, right, it looks like that is all the questions that are popping up. Dr. White, thank you so much for joining us today. I know I learned
Absolutely.
a lot, and I really appreciate your time and insights.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And like I said, I appreciate the time, and we've appreciated the partnership that we've created with SchoolWorks.
We're rooting for you all at Harvard. Congrats on your first day tomorrow. Best of
Well,
luck.
thank you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
And before we go, I just want to share the SchoolWorks Change Makers grants. This is the newest cycle, is now open. It's a $5,000 awards to educators seeking to lead an impact-focused initiative to support student outcomes, well-being, or kind of a combination of both. The link is in the chat. Deadline's October 15th, a really great opportunity. Please share with your colleagues and network. Again, thank you to Dr. Brandon C. White of Harvard. Everyone, have a terrific Tuesday.
Thanks.
Take care.